What's up, everyone? I want to circle back to 2022 when there was a lack of rentals and the real estate market was hotter than ever. Someone bought a one-bedroom condo in Surrey back in 2022. Let's call them Frank. And honestly, at that time, it was definitely a smart move. Rents were going up basically every month. There were no empty apartments anywhere in the city. And every news headline was screaming that if you didn't own a rental property in Metro Vancouver, you were falling behind. So Frank bought a place and rented out for $2,300 a month. That covered his mortgage, covered his strata fees, covered his property taxes, and he even had a little bit left over at the end of each month. He was cash flowing. Not a home run, but it worked. He was in good shape. Fast forward to 2026, his tenant gives notice and moves out. No big deal, right? Well, Frank just relists his place. It's easy. No problem. Except it sat empty for 2 weeks, then 3, then a full month. So he dropped the rent a little bit. Still nothing. Dropped it again. Finally, someone said yes, but not at $2,300, at $1,850 a month. That's almost $500 less than what he was getting before. And now every single month, Frank has to write a check out of his own pocket just to keep that condo. He's not making money anymore. He's losing money every single month. Here's the thing. Frank didn't do anything wrong. He made a smart decision with the information he had at that time. The problem is that he bought in 2022 and the market we're sitting in today, not the same thing whatsoever for rentals or for prices of value. The problem is that he bought back in 2022 when the market was insane, and the market we're sitting in today are just not even close to comparison. And most people haven't caught on to that yet. So that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about in this video, so you don't end up in the same spot as Frank did. So what's actually happening to rents right now? Let me paint a picture of what's going on. Vancouver rents right now are at their lowest point since early 2022, and they haven't dipped. They've been falling every single month for more than 2 years straight. 2 years. That's not a blip. That's a trend. Now, if you're a renter watching this, that's probably great news. And honestly, it's about time because things were just insane for too long. But if you own a rental property or you've been thinking about renting your home out instead of selling it, this is the part that you really need to pay attention to. So why is this happening right now? Because for basically my entire career, Vancouver had a vacancy rate under 1%, meaning there were almost zero empty apartments in the whole city. It has been wild over the last 15 years. Landlords could list a place and have 20 applications by the next day. So what changed? Two things. First, supply. A ton of new rental buildings are finishing construction right now. These projects that broke ground 3, 4, 5 years ago, and now they're finally done. And they're all hitting the market at the same time. That pipeline isn't emptying out yet either. There's still more coming. Second, demand. And this one caught almost everyone off guard. For the first time in recent memory, Canada's population actually shrank last year. We went from record population growth to actually going backwards. And here in BC specifically, we had multiple quarters where more non-permanent residents, that's international students, temporary workers, that kind of thing, they left the province. More left the province than came in. And here's why that matters. Almost all of those people are renters. So what you've got is a wave of new apartments hitting the market at the exact same moment that the pool of people looking to rent is shrinking. That's a supply and demand problem, plain and simple. Result? Greater Vancouver's vacancy rate has more than doubled in just 1 year. It's now at its highest level in over 30 years. The last time we saw this many empty rentals, like actual printed ads in the newspaper, that's completely out of the picture these days. So how the rental market is pulling the resale market down with it. Here's where it gets really interesting. This is a thing that I feel like almost nobody has connected yet. Most people hear about falling rents and think, okay, that's a landlord problem. That's a tenant win. Moving on. What's happening in the rental market right now is spilling over into the resale market in a really significant way. Let me explain it as simply as possible. For the last 10 or 15 years, a huge chunk of buyers in Metro Vancouver weren't people looking for a home to live in. They were investors. People buying one bedrooms and small condos because the math worked. Rents were going up, there were no vacancies, and you were basically guaranteed cash flow from the day you got the keys if you're putting enough down. At the same time, renters were completely burned out. Imagine competing for apartments in a city with less than a 1% vacancy rate, getting your rent raised 10% every year, and that's why they have restrictions on rentals now. Being worried about being rent evicted. Eventually, a lot of these renters said, forget it, I'm just gonna buy. And so they jumped into the resale market too. So you had two big groups of buyers, investors on one side, burned out renters on the other, and both of them were being pushed into the market by what was happening with rentals. Now flip it around and look at what's going on today. Investors are basically out of the picture. The math does not work here in BC anymore. You can't justify buying a condo as an investment when rents are falling month over month and they're at a 30-year high vacancy rate. Personally, I'm not seeing any investor clients. I used to work with a handful at a time, and now they're completely out of the picture. And the burned out renters, they're not burned out anymore. They have so many options. I've heard of some people moving from one condo to another in the same building just to save $30 a month in rent. To me, that's wild, but to each their own. Some landlords are even offering a free month of rent as a signing bonus right now. That would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. So the pressure that used to push renters into buying has basically disappeared. What that means is two of the biggest sources of demand in the market have turned off at the same time. And you can definitely see it in the numbers. Right now in the Fraser Valley, there's over 9,200 active listings. That's about 50% more than the seasonal average for this time of the year. That is not a seller's market, not even close. It is one of the most drastic buyer's markets that I've seen in my career. So what do you actually do about this? What does this mean for you? Let's talk about it practically. If you currently own a rental property, whether it's a condo, basement suite, or anything like that, the most important thing you can do right now is actually sit down and run the numbers. Not the numbers from when you bought. You need to look at the numbers from today. Ask yourself, what would my place actually rent for right now if it were empty tomorrow? Not what your tenant's been paying for the last few years. What would it actually list for today in a market where the unit next door might be offering a free month or a discounted rate compared to yours? Then look at your strata fees after the last increase, your property taxes. Most importantly, what does your mortgage payment look like when you renew? That's a big one. A lot of investors locked in at around 2.5%, 3% during the pandemic. Some of those people are renewing right now into rates that are almost double that or more. Even if rents had stayed completely flat, the payment jump alone would blow up the math. It just wouldn't work anymore. So combining that with falling rents, and you've got a real problem. I see people walk into those renewals completely blind. Don't run the numbers until the letter shows up from the bank saying the renewal is coming up. And by then, they're not making a plan. They're reacting. They're taking an emotional approach rather than an educated approach. So know your renewal date. Run the numbers right now, not 6 months from now. Be prepared. The other thing we're thinking about is opportunity costs. I've talked to a lot of investors who are sitting on $200,000 or $300,000 of equity to condo, but they're cash flow negative. And they won't sell because they don't want to sell at a loss. I get that instinct, I really do. But here's the thing, that equity isn't doing anything. Actively costing you money month over month, and home prices are also declining too. So you might be better off to sell now than trying to wait this out. And that same money sitting somewhere else could be paying down your own mortgage or sitting in a GIC earning 4% risk-free or redeployed somewhere else that's actually producing some income. The only reason that that option looks bad is because you're comparing it to the peak price from 2022. Compared to what's actually costing you to hold right now, and then the picture looks very different. Now, what if you're a homeowner that's been thinking about renting your place out instead of selling it because you don't love the prices you're seeing? Same exercise. You need to sit down with today's rents, not what your neighbor got back in 2022. Figure out if you can actually cover your costs, maybe $400, $500 less per month than you were assuming. And then ask yourself what happens if the place sits empty for 6 weeks between tenants. Can you carry that? Is that something that you can actually afford to go through? Because a lot of people are making that decision based on outdated assumptions. And that can be a really costly mistake. So here's where the opportunity actually is right now. I don't want to leave you on a down note here because every market has two sides, and this one is no different. Yes, the rental market is soft. Yes, that's creating real pressure for people holding investment condos. But that same softness is creating real opportunity in other parts of the market. The benchmark price for detached homes in the Fraser Valley is down about 9% year over year right now. That's real money. That's a huge difference. And when you think about what's underneath that number, investors have left the market, renters aren't panicking to get into anything anymore, and inventory is piling up. All three of those things are happening at the same time, and that doesn't happen very often. So if you've been waiting for the market to shift in a way that gives you some leverage as a buyer, well, right now is one of the better times that we've seen. It's not as obvious as the opportunities people are used to seeing. It's not a headline moment, but the dynamics are genuinely different than what they were 2 to 3 years ago. Now, there's one specific type of property in Surrey right now that's getting hit way harder than anything else in this market, and most owners of these properties have no idea it's happening to them yet. They're just noticing that showings have slowed down and the feedback has gotten quieter, and they're assuming it's just because the market is slow. But it's not just the market. It's something much more specific than that. Make sure to stay tuned for my next video. I'm going to be diving into this a little bit further. In the meantime, if you've got questions about what any of this means for your specific situation, whether you're thinking about selling, renting, or buying, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to just chat, go through the numbers with you. No pressure. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.